Wiba nagigikushkos sheba.
Kainaf suiva. Ki Temin quamdas. Kindas.
This is the sound of an Ojibwe grandmother and talking with her grandson in Ojibwe. This is becoming a rarity. We don't have grandchildren talking with their grandparents much anymore because the language is not being passed on. That's due to the effect of residential schools in the past. The federal government forbade the language to be spoken at residential schools. Children were punished, and so then we developed this block in passing on our language to our children. My son doesn't speak it, but miraculously, I was able to pass on the language to my grandson, Aandeg Muldrew, who is here today, who will be talking about his experience in learning his language and his path and what he's doing today. He began his journey at age 12 when we went to language camps in the summer. And then he came to my university classes with me to sit in on them and learn the grammar that way. And then he eventually went to Oog. Ojibwe Muda Oma Kitakiminang is the name of the program at Fond du Lac, Minnesota, where they didn't speak English for 3 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks now. But that's where he honed his fluency in the language by not speaking English for those many weeks. He's put a lot of work into becoming a speaker, looking at dictionaries, studying dictionaries, grammar books, and to further his his grammar and his vocabulary. But for speaking, we talk weekly. We visit on Zoom, and we just talk in a language. We text, chat on Facebook in Ojibwe. So we keep up the language that way, even though he lives in a different city. He's working on his master's right now. I will say some words, say some things about this program, which I should have done at the beginning. Welcome to the Indigenous Language Institute's web symposium series. My name is Patricia Ningwans Nadu. I'm an ILI board member and your moderator. Today's presentation is featuring Aandeg Muldrew, and it will last for an hour approximately. After the presentation, we'll take a 10-minute break before starting the Q&A session. During the break, keep this window open. Don't leave the webinar. It'll be hard to get back in. For the question and answer period, to submit a question, there'll be the Q&A symbol at the bottom of the screen. You could use that to submit a question, and we'll address your question. So now I would like to introduce Aandeg Muldrew. I have already introduced him, so what I'll do is I'll ask you, Aandeg, can you describe some more about your journey to becoming a proficient speaker? How did you get there?
Bonjour, yeah. In Aandeg, I go to Gisik, this Nekanigo, Jajak to them. Again, I'm really happy to be here and talk about it. And I feel like I'm pretty lucky that I wouldn't have been able to make it without other people. You speaking to me and other people, like, it all really helped me get to where I am. I think that's a big part of learning a language is you have to have a community, people to speak with and help you, since that's all what it's all about, communicating with people. So I really feel lucky for that. And, you know, because I grew up in the city, in Winnipeg, you know, I did speaking mostly just English. You know, I maybe knew a few words, but that was it. So I was like kind of wondering, where do I fit into things? What am I gonna do? But I'm just 12 or whatever, so like I'm just doing whatever 12-year-olds do. So as when you said like we're gonna go back to Laxal and that camp, I was like sure, and I had a really good time there. So and then, you know, things just kind of kept going from there. I went to your classes, was doing good, so I was just, it just seemed to come easily at that point. Because I just was going to your university classes that you're teaching, and then later on, just kind of growing my knowledge from there, and be in the car, whatever, going. Remember we'd print stuff off at Staples or whatever, and then it's nice.
Road trips.
That would be it too, yeah. Translating the signs, even though they didn't make any sense, but
And then Oog.
Mm-hmm.
How was Oog?
That was a big thing because, like, you know, I'd be talking to you and then, you know, some people in class, but that was kind of the extent that I would, you know, use it. I would go home and then I wouldn't use it. So that was a big thing. So it's again, like a 2-week program now in the summer, and also in the winter, there's a program where it's every weekend, 1 weekend every month in the winter. So I think you took me to one that at that point. But so with that program, it's pretty much all day. You sit together, you talk together, all in Ojibwe. You eat together. You don't sleep together because there's dorms. You have dorms there. But everything else, yeah, you're talking Ojibwe. So that was completely amazing for me, just to see that and hear that. I was kind of just a fly on the wall at that point. So because I didn't have that same experience, you know, being able to speak like that, having that kind of like push to speak, since, you know, no one was speaking English at all. So usually it's about 10 or 12 students and maybe 4 or 5 teachers who are fluent teachers. And then there's a grammar kind of part too, where there's more English, but, so yeah, the first time we were there, you know, a lot of other people are kind of struggle with that same kind of block. They're shy to speak. So I think we were just sitting around at, we were eating lunch or something, and everyone's kind of just like quietly eating at the different tables or something. Maybe if they knew someone, they would be talking to them kind of quietly, but that was kind of just quietly eating our rest. And I think you took us and some other people to another room, and you're like, okay, we're gonna do something for the next meal or something. So we it was like a skit we're gonna do during the dinner, but it's gonna be a secret. No one would know that, you know, it was a skit. So we practiced that, and then the next supper or whatever, you know, again, people were just eating, and then this couple starts arguing. You know, they start arguing. They're like, you're always sitting with that other woman or whatever. And so they're arguing, and the guy's kind of like, shh, like, don't make a big scene. And then everyone's kind of, all the students, they're kind of like, is this for real or whatever? But still kind of just minding their own business at that point still. And then, so they're still arguing. And then the other woman, Dekons, she gets like, acts like she's pissed off and walks out of the room. And so the couple's still there, like, going on. And then that
Like,
one old,
Then I told you to go chase after.
Yeah, I go after Atikung's, that one who left. Yeah, so anyways, and then there's that old guy, that Mikugabo. He passed on already now, but he was like, he believed it. He also believed it. And he was a fluent speaker there. He was like, what was he saying? He was like, like, it's their business. Yeah.
He thought it was really happening for real.
Mm-hmm.
That was so funny. And then everybody thought it was real. And then all of a sudden you and Diku's come back in, and you had a sign 9 months later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she has this volleyball under her t-shirt. And then that's when everybody knew it was just a joke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was so funny.
And then the guy was like, it was him, and points at me.
He says, oh no, and he runs out. Aandeg runs out the room.
Like, that was my only line, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to do things like that at the immersion. Yeah, just off the wall, to have fun in the language, to get creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that's like a really big thing. That's kind of like skits or role playing, kind of gets you out of the classroom, gets people using their language, and together to find a fun way. Mm-hmm. Such a great use of it.
You get to be creative. You get to think on your feet. How you have to reach into your mind for all those words that so you could use them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How else did being at immersion help you?
Again, it's not just with those those kinds of things. That's like when you're part of the activity itself, you're using the words again on the spot, or if you're just listening as well to those kinds of things, that's really helpful too, because I feel like learning from a dictionary is really good. If you have a really good dictionary, that's a good resource, but it also just hearing the words when you hear someone say something, it's just like a whole nother experience if you're able to listen and pick that up. Then it's like these specific examples that will live in your memory easier, I think. And also, if you don't understand a word, you can pick it up from the context, especially if it's like a play or a skit or something, or just someone acting something out. That adds a whole nother. It's easier to understand. You're not relying on English to make that bridge, I guess.
Yeah. Did it help when people were paraphrasing? When you didn't understand something, it helped when they paraphrased it?
Sometimes. I think, yeah. It again depends on what words I know, but if you're able to explain it in multiple ways, or provide just some simple words, like, okay, this is the general topic we're talking about, that helps a long way to kind of narrow down the options. Like, if you hear a word, it could be 5 possible things, maybe, or just based on the context. And so if there's more other words, then okay, you can narrow that down and make sense of it. Like, because in immersion, it's a new thing for a lot of us. Like, again, people in the city or some communities don't have the language anymore, so they don't hear it even at all. So it's a big, huge thing to be in immersion, because you're really submerged, and it's kind of disorienting for us. I don't know if anyone's ever been in that kind of situation, but tires you out. So it's big work to be in an environment where you never know. You always have to work to really understand what's going on, at least at first.
Mm-hmm. When you're in Winnipeg and you listen to Ojibwe's talking, do you eavesdrop? Do you understand a lot of what they're saying?
Try and eavesdrop, yeah. Yeah, that book here, How to Be an Eavesdropper. No. Sometimes I understand them. Sometimes they're kind of quiet, or use and other type of like Ojibwe or something. Hard to understand, but sometimes I do get it, yeah. On the bus or there are some people speaking.
Listening to fluent people speak, that's a really good experience. If you hear Roger and I talk, for instance, we talk in the language, and I like it when you're there listening to us.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just the cash, like when you look for us learners, you know, we have dictionaries. I have a bunch on this table right now, and we have, you know, grammar stuff, and then there's, you know, stories that people have written down and recorded, you know, so you can listen to that. But there's a real lack of that kind of like, you know, you and your friend Roger just talking. There's not as much of that material out there for us to listen to.
In Canada, we have, you know, French everywhere. We have things translated into French that we can look at. There's TV, there's radio in French. So a person wanting to learn French has all those resources to learn from, but we don't have that in Ojibwe. We don't have that. So we'll just have to keep creating more.
Yeah, that everyday language, that kind of is just so good. Like because again, when we come into immersion, we're, you know, we have our book learning or whatever, and then we have to kind of translate that into like everyday, you know, just chatting, you know, about our day, you're eating, or you're gonna play some games or something, playing cards, and then how you have to kind of translate what we know already into doing that, and then to be kind of playful and.
Kegona kiabe kiwita shandan hanin kai hijwich ikuyen che nshnape muyen. Kitayan ma chwapanda iweyen.
Oh yeah.
Nongumana.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So I also have some slides to share. Again, it's kind of on the subject of teaching. Since I was kind of talking about my journey, learning the language, and then so I want to talk a little bit about teaching, since that's what I do now as well. I think I was like 5 years ago, you went out of town there, and then you had been teaching that class, and then you were like, you teach it because you're out of town. It's like, my plan was to teach, like, you know, years down the road or whatever. That was the whole plan I had in my mind. But anyways, so you're out of town, but I had sat in that class for years and years. So 3 years at least. So it was this intro class at the university. So I was like, I'll give it a try, I guess. And you said I knew the material, and you said you'd send me some stuff. So that's what I did. I almost didn't, though. I almost walked out of the room, but I ended up staying. So I just have some.
You were only 19 at the time.
Yeah. I was
being a sessional instructor.
Most of them were older than me. It was fun, though. It was fun. Now I really enjoy teaching. It's kind of nerve-wracking that first few times, but yeah, now I still teach there at the University of Manitoba, and then also at that Immersion Academy, I teach there as well, or I taught there in the winter anyways, and I'm working there. So I have just a few kind of things to talk about that kind of role-playing and skits, or it could be, you can really adapt it in a lot of different ways. And again, in Kokum, if you want to join in there, that's good. Share your thoughts. Okay. So again, we kind of already went through a lot of these things already, but again, with a Anishinaabe or Ojibwe, there's all these different kind of ways you can learn. And I used all of these in my own learning, and they're all helpful. Again, with the goal that you're in your everyday life. Hopefully these all lead to in your everyday life with your friends or family, you're speaking. So again, these have all really helped me. Immersion, games, role-playing, grammar. Again, this is last year, day a day, my dad there. Yeah, we already talked about this, so. And this is that academy there. That's where we were in that winter, that one time with that group. So again, we already talked about that. So.
Fond du Lac, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. So again, yeah, I want to talk about role playing. Can be a lot of different things. Again, there's different types of things you can do. It could be skits that they make up on the spot, you know, or it can be kind of more things based around, you know, that the teacher sets up a scenario. Maybe you've been learning about you know, going to the store or something like that, food, chopping wood or something like that. So it's already kind of set up, and then you kind of provide a little scenario like, okay, you're the cook woman, you're the grandson, you're gonna, and you're chopping wood, collecting wood, you know, for a fire or something. And then they go from there. You know, the main point is they kind of use the words they know, talking with each other. And you as a teacher kind of can set it up and support them, but then they go from there.
A favorite scenario is checking in at a motel, 2 travelers, and then you assign somebody to be the desk clerk. So if the students are fairly at a beginning stage, you know, the conversation will be very, you know, basic. But if they're more advanced speakers, then they can take off with the scene, you know. The plot can just twist and turn, and they get really creative and, you know, very funny sometimes. A great thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. Like something like, yeah. It's basically improv, which can kind of be nerve-wracking sometimes. So you want to support them. And I tried improv in English one time, and I was just like terrible. I was so bad at it, but better in Ojibwe, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's that conversational language. So you want to like, yeah, say you're doing a good job. And sometimes with like beginners, yeah, it's just kind of like one thread of a conversation, and then, you know, it ends because that's what they know right now. But and again, with props are good to use. But I mean, on Zoom, it's kind of hard, but you can still do this kind of work online on Zoom. It's a little bit harder, I think, but still good. And again, you're taking them out of the classroom into kind of like a whole scenario where they're not students anymore. They're, you know, they're speakers. You know, they're using a lot they know. So I have like 3 kind of examples of something that I've done in class. One's like an intro, and then one's an intermediate, and then one's an advanced kind of, and there's a video with that. So this was that immersion, that intro class in university. I was teaching this over the winter on Zoom. And again, a lot of people are new to the language in that class. The university students, some of them are parents, or a few of them had, you know, heard some language before. So, but a lot of them are new to it. So got to get them used to just saying words and phrases. So we kind of began with just hi, how are you? Just kind of trying to get away from the written language first. But then later on, we were doing the written example. So I got them to read some conversations in our textbook that we all had. And then I sent them into breakout rooms in groups of 4. And then I said like, okay, you're going to make your own conversation kind of based on that, and then say that later. and they present in twos, in pairs, but I've had them in groups of 4 so they could kind of hear what each other were doing and kind of brainstorm together. So that's kind of hard on Zoom because otherwise it's usually just one person speaking. So it was good to kind of get them in a smaller group. And again, the goal of that was get people comfortable speaking to each other and learn this kind of conversational language, since, you know, there's not that same kind of back and forth that we have in an in-person class. And then also once class is done, they're, you know, back at their homes already. They just, you know, leave meeting, they're back at their home. So I tried to get a little bit more interaction, trying to do that, get them speaking and using that. So that was one example there. I used the intro. And the second example, this was what we did at Sault Ste. Marie there. Sault Ste. Marie. So again, this was in another immersion camp, I guess, that we had there in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario. There's an intro group that was there, and then I was with the intermediate group. And it was my cool one Pat there who organized the whole camp there
at Algoma University. That's actually a 2-week course.
Yeah, and so with the intermediate student, there's about 15, right? It's about 15 of them, and they all at least been learning for like a year or so. But they're all at different levels at that point. So kind of throughout the week would be on different subjects, maybe 2 or 3 days each. Like we were learning about like grocery shopping, buying food, getting food. And we kind of started out with flashcards. So, you know, if people didn't know the words or just get everyone on the same page, we'd have like pictures and sometimes that might be English and then Ojibwe on the other side. So just getting everyone to know the words, some of the basic words, to reinforce that with everyone. And then we're like, later on, this is immersion again. So later on, we're going to go to the grocery store. We're actually going to go to the grocery store, but we're going to prepare you to do that. And then later on, we did other activities like fishing and driving, driving school.
We're setting a net, and we had no experience in setting a net. Fortunately, it ended very, very safely. Yeah, driving lessons, that was fun. I didn't get to hear you guys. That was good.
Yeah, they all excellent drivers. They all passed. Yeah, we'd set up with, you know, just the words, different games, kind of help them remember the words, then kind of make them build sentences a little bit. And then what we do is once I was kind of sure they kind of had these words, we'd be sitting around the table and then kind of get them in groups of 2 or 3, and then, you know, kind of give them a situation or like, okay, you're on a road trip, and then, you know, they would go from there, like just kind of going back and forth. Again, with kind of these little skits, and then it would be good because then everyone else could kind of listen to that as well and hear what they're saying. And I may jump in if they're struggling on a word or something, but kind of just leave it up to them. But again, you want to have that support there for them, because if you just if they don't know the words or they don't know the situation, you know, it can be really hard and for learners to kind of to grow from that. So because it's hard to make mistakes. As a learner, I find, like, since it's different learning a different language, I find like French or something like that, since it's not like you're making a mistake, but it's not your own language. It's not your own language that you're making a mistake in. Like, it's harder with Ojibwe because it's like all our relatives and ancestors spoke it, and then you're messing up how to say hello or something. So it kind of takes, it's a bigger weight to make even like these mistakes. So you want to support them and make it easier for them to make it a welcoming group. Because then that payoff will be there. They'll be speaking and just, they're always laughing around that table, because they just would be playing off each other in these kind of different situations. Like,
Do you remember the debates we had? We had the students taking part in debates. Should one get married? What's the advantages of being single?
Yeah, we got split up and then into two groups and kind of had some prep time, and then we had the debate. Two people on there are two people on opposing sides, and they're actually married now. So I don't know what someone won the argument, I guess.
Yeah. That was really good because people had to quickly think of how to say, oh, marriage is good for these reasons. Marriage is not good for these reasons. They had to really think of vocabulary on the spot very quickly and understand what the other side was saying, because these are all intermediate level. They can understand some, but still not at the fluent level. So that was a good exercise. That's very good. Storytelling that happened. Square dancing, remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You students, the students learned the instructions, the steps that they were to learn, written on a board. And then we had the fiddle music, and then we just had everybody follow the instructions on the board to do their square dance, which was not really a square dance.
I don't know anything about dancing, but it was kind of saying with the net setting. Okay, I know some of the words here. Can teach that.
So many ways to be creative in immersion setting, to hear the language and to speak it, to interact with each other.
Yeah, you don't want to just be sitting in a table or classroom, like, okay, this is this word, or this is that. Gotta make it fun there. Draw pictures, yeah.
So in your last year at OOG, how would you say your progress was at that point, from the time that you first arrived there? Can you describe that?
Yeah, so at that academy there, yeah. Well, when I first came there, just for that first weekend, yeah, I don't know how, I probably said like 10 things or something like that for that weekend. And then later on, I think I came to the summer group as well. I think it's hard just sitting there in a situation like that and just not saying a lot, but you still get a lot. You still learn, so many words, and I was kind of amazed by everyone there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to come back and speak. That's what I wanted to do. Some people might get discouraged. Anyways, I wanted to come back. So, and then kind of slow. It wasn't any big aha moment where I was just I don't know, a loud mouth or whatever. I just, kind of just every year, I must have been there 4 years at least, or 4 summers. I would just come back and know more words, be more confident speaking. I would know the people there as well, more and more, which made it easier, I think, too. And I'd be able to talk more and ask questions, or be chatting, joking around. So it was kind of just a year by year thing. I knew more and more. And now I was teaching there over the past winter. So now I'm able to kind of talk about things in Ojibwe and kind of make sense, and do some different games and activities with the students, try and explain words. So now I'm at that point.
Did it help that there were people at your same level when you were there the last year or the first year?
Yeah, it's always good to have people at the same level, or sometimes it can be intimidating to speak to someone who knows more, or you still do it, of course, but yeah, it's good to have that kind of camaraderie with some other people there as well, because we were put in groups kind of according to our level, and that we'd go around with them. That was nice. And then at supper or other points of the day, it would be everyone there, so doing something to learn from them.
I remember one student finding out, hey, they put us in the dummy group. But that was good that they were at the same level, because then I could tailor the lesson so that it was not so stressful for them than if they were all mixed.
Yeah.
And then the more advanced ones, then you could say more. You could, have more freedom because they understand. They can speak more.
Yeah. With immersion, you want to have that. Because if someone asks a question, or there's, and if a advanced student asks a question, sometimes the learner another more beginner person won't get the context, or won't get as much out of it.
And during noon hour, when everybody is all together, the beginners and the advanced, that's when I would be asked to come up with a group activity for everybody after they finished eating. I remember we did opposites. I would say a word in Ojibwe that means deep. So, and then I would divide the group into two, this side and that side. And whichever group came up with the right answer, they got a point. And that was fun. That was fun. Eh?
Yeah, even if it's kind of sometimes hard to think of the opposite of something, like, okay, shallow, and then you have to think of the word, but you're still thinking, trying to think about it, which is really good, I think. And then if you get it right, then that's even better. But that was always really fun to play.
So the teacher has to come up with a whole list of opposite words for that game. And I found it to be a fun game. Then were you there that summer that where a student, she was the fortune teller and she was reading people's fortunes?
I wasn't there, no, that time.
Yeah, she's a very fluent person now, and she was playing the fortune teller. She would take the flashcards, and that would be her she'd build a story around that word. If it had to do with driving, then she would tell a fortune around driving. It was really, she was very creative. She was just learning the language too. Yeah. And then there was another time, I don't think you were there yet either, where I asked, I had everybody break into groups, and they had to come up with as many words as they could think of that start with the letter M, for instance. And whoever came up with the most was the winner.
Yeah, you told me about that, and then that's what I did in my class as well later on. That was fun. They're all secretly writing it down in a group,
so the other people don't hear your words. Yeah, all these activities and games to help learners practice hearing the language and using it. What other memories do you have of your language learning?
Again, with that more advanced group there, we'd have these, at supper every day, there'd be a skit at this Immersion Academy. So we kind of prepare beforehand in our group, of people who kind of had that same level of language. So we'd prepare a skit for dinner. And the main part of it is, what we always had to do is we had to somehow introduce the foods that we're eating for supper, but other than that, we could do whatever. So there was all sorts of different plot lines people would come up with. And it was usually it was kind of more improv, but we'd usually prepare some sort of like idea or situation that we'd be in. We kind of just do that on our own and then present it in front of everyone, which is kind of a whole experience. But that was really fun all the time. Seeing what other people came up with or your own ideas, I don't know, just wacky kind of things. There was like songs, some people did songs. Not me, but other people. Or you pretend you're at a Ojibwe restaurant or something, and they'd be looking at the menu or something.
I remember one year where they had to do a skit. So one group did the skit and, did their lines, speaking lines, and then they left. So then another group came on, and they didn't want to say the lines. They wanted to sing them opera style. That was fun. We had some people singing in really low voices, soprano. This is what happens in immersion. You could really get creative.
Yeah, I get. Yeah.
When the motion kispen kwenoit dashendaman. Ajnagega.
I kiabe Diane kamaznate seg. Nano de baigase. Okay, yeah. So again, this advanced immersion, this is part of that. It's part of that Immersion Academy that we're talking about. So over the winter, again, it's all on Zoom. So I'd been getting the students again during the course of our class on the weekends to do it. Both me and my kokum had been getting them to do these kind of skits. Again, because they're more advanced students, they're used to immersion. They can, if they're given a minute to brainstorm, they can come up with their own idea. Or again, if you give them, again, this kind of a scenario, they can go on their own, more than an intro, a beginner can, since they already have all these words and grammar already, you want to give them a chance to use what they know and be creative with it. And I find as a learner myself, it's helpful to do, because you're kind of put in this real life situation and you have to think about, and sometimes you run into something you don't know how to say. I think that's helpful as well. Because you're in this environment where you can ask how to say that. Like in the real world, I out and about, I have to call Kokum or something like that to get the answer. But so if you're in a class, it's that kind of a good area to practice and see what you do know and speak with your other students, and then also be in a place where the teacher can jump in, or you can ask about the grammar, and as a teacher, just you can jump in and help out, provide a word here or there. So I have a little video there. Two of my friends who are also my students, we had a little Zoom meeting a day ago and recorded them. So we're talking about we were talking about going to the Palo, and that's kind of where we went off from there. But I forgot to record it. And then they reminded me. So I also learned how to add subtitles, since that's kind of a little, but it should be all there. So it's like 5-minute long video here. So we'll listen to that. So you'll kind of see how, again, these are advanced students, so they kind of set up the situation, and then they kind of stumble over. We're trying to figure out who is the oldest there, but then we can go into it and they go back and forth, and that's really good, really good. So hopefully this all works. Oh, it works out good here. Okay. Wait, hold on. I think I forgot to share with my sound.
You shared your smile.
All right, I think it should be good now. Do you hear it? Nigach, yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah. Ni me doing the jam, yeah. Kedina way and dim. When tingin zezik and watch zezik is it? Gete ad is it? Quinoa. Oldest.
Oh.
Anine taso bubunig is
Nin?
Mm-hmm.
Nishtana Jangiswe.
Kainin. Ni aki David Schumann.
Yeah, I need a fee.
Mongo Jesus? Ish Kigamizage Jesus?
Niwin?
No.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, couldn't have Jesus. Wapi and Gita Bishkam.
Okay. So, Keen Kizazikas, yeah.
Aku ain't take it down.
Yeah. Kisaye. Oh. So yeah. Ni meeting kita ni meeting.
Oh. Bojo Wapishka Kizis Akwe. Anin is Bimad is yin.
Oh, Busho is our Benesti. Nimenoya.
Oh, wow.
Indash.
Hey, Nimenoya Gainin, Niji Kendem Yanoma.
Giga Neem. Yeah, Giga Neem.
Hey, dash Gawin dash na Nimi DC.
Going Giga Neem. Going Giga Neem is going on that. Going Giga Neem is Sinungom.
Yeah.
Oh.
Inash.
Yeah, gonna budge Inga Neem. Inga Gugwe a munch kwayak cake do yamban. Inga Gugwe Shunia.
Oh,
Bakinage.
Yeah. Bakinage. Okay, get to go Ninatanim.
Gonna batch Nunun Deskade. Gin Dash Nun Deskade na.
Apane ni wisin.
Waganen Dinawa Gui or we Mijian.
Mijian.
Wamijian. Oh yeah.
Gonna budge. Get you taco on a gun.
Anishinaabe Taco again. Oh, Minotagwa.
Oh wow. Imbigu skadas. Dayanina Junia.
Yeah, and Diana, Aandegs Journey.
Oh, wow. Staga kita Adawe niche.
Niche.
Basic name, basic name.
Bama,
Niche.
Gawison.
Gun.
How? Nui Adawe, Niswe, Anishinaabe, Taco again.
Oh, niche name, basic game.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, me glitch.
Bama Nui Buggies Ima Zaga Gunning.
Staga minoa.
Bama Nui Buggies Ima Zaga Gunning.
Oh, wow. Gineta.
Ginago. Ich bin we bijayen. No, we bijayen.
Oh, geget. Nimindan bagizoyan. Inga ayu de zake igening je bagizoyan gae.
Oh,
Me goch gagwej mian.
Minange.
Oh, me. Be glitch.
Oh, Nesha Give me that one. That was very
Mhm,
good. That was very good. Good example of advanced immersion students trying out their language.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see them, going back and forth, and then, it can be, you can ask questions during like, how do you say that, or how to, as a teacher, I'm also always thinking, well, how can I explain a word? How can using other words I know and act it out, or however, like, I'm always wondering how to say things too on Zoom.
Well, that's how you learned. That's how you learned to. Yeah. So I think it's coming time for a break, a 10-minute break. So if you people are wanting to take a coffee break, do it now, but don't leave this this site. Don't leave. Because it'll be hard to get back in apparently. Just turn off your sound, I guess. And then we'll be back for the question and answer period when the break is over. Bonjour, we are back. And I've got some questions that, that have been submitted. The first one is from Mildred Young. How long is each class? 1 hour, less or more? Aandeg, would you like to talk about that? And I will type an answer here. Well, no, you can answer.
Yeah. It varies a lot. On Zoom, I feel like it's sometimes hard to go 45 minutes is maybe a good amount to, and then have a break, but at least on Zoom. So during the winter, it would usually be something like 2 hours is the time we had allotted. So I'd kind of we had to go have two kind of sections and have a break in between. But that can be tiring just on Zoom to do that. In person, again, you kind of want to break it up in that kind of, sometimes I'd have like a 3-hour class in one evening. And then again, you want to have a break for that, so.
Yeah, you have to structure the class so that there's 15-minute sections, eh? 15 minutes for this, 15 minutes of quiet writing, 15 for that. So it's not one big long session.
Yeah.
For the teacher to figure out what activities could be done, for half an hour, what to teach.
Yeah. I was teaching 45-minute kind of like Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday schedule one time. And that was kind of hard just to fit in everything I want to in one class, because then they're gone and for 2 days. So then it kind of doesn't stick as much. But yeah, you want to have kind of like a few different activities. If you have just 45 minutes, like it's hard to fit that in.
Drills are really useful, where you involve everybody into, these drills. I found drills to help me with my language learning with French. Another question that was submitted was by Eva King. You mentioned Zoom learning activities. How challenging was it to move to remote learning during the pandemic? Aandeg?
At first, I didn't really know what to do because, sorry, there's someone outside my window vacuuming something. So I might, if you hear that, that's what it is. But at first, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, since a lot of the activities I have are like in person or require like cards and kind of things that you're touching and playing with other people with. So first, I wasn't really sure. And then slowly I've been coming up with more activities that you can do, or like online flashcards. Again, with these kind of like role-playing kind of situations, you can get them to learn the words, and then they can kind of talk to each other on Zoom, which works too.
One thing I'll say to you, Eva King, is that for me too, teaching on Zoom, you're limited to what you could do when you're ordinarily in the classroom. But because of Zoom, we've been able to have more students enroll, because they don't have to move into the city to attend university in person. So they can stay in their home community and still be a student, an enrolled student, and take part in it. And the other nice thing about it, I think, is that their children can sit in the classroom and learn along with them. I had that happen in some instances, or a sibling, or a parent if the parent doesn't speak the language. So you can be teaching a little family where normally it would be just that one student coming into the classroom. So that student could practice what words she's learning, he or she is learning, with his family members. So that's the good part of Zoom teaching for language learning. So it's not a bad thing. That's an unexpected benefit.
Yeah, it's just takes, you got to use teaching, think of creative ideas and how to get them to learn, and then be able to use it with each other. That's kind of the goal. You kind of start with learning the words and then going to them using them. So try and design some sort of creative thing. And it's just hard at first, I found, but then slowly getting there with Zoom.
Yeah. And then Evelyn she asked, I asked earlier, how long do you teach the language? Is it daily or a few hours?
Well, I feel ideally you'd be learning it every day. So those summer programs are great because you have this daily input, you're always using it. You get the most, I think, out of that. And then I've had other times where I've been teaching where it's like a once a week thing, which is sometimes hard because you have to kind of rely on them to to do their own work and keep it kind of active in their mind. So it's still there when they come back to class. So, because if they don't do any work, if they don't want to do the work, you know, they're just going to be submersed in English the whole week and then come back and they're not there as much. So ideally, the more regular use you have, the better. Yeah.
Another question from Gloria Sosi. Do your students encounter problems in writing the language?
I find with the intro class, people are kind of getting used to our writing system that we have. Generally, with Ojibwe, we kind of just have one writing system that students use anyways, which is pretty good. And it's pretty simple. We have less sounds in English, so it's pretty easy in that sense to pick up. I picked it up pretty easily. So generally people are pretty good with writing. We don't have as many problems with our spelling system. It's more people who are fluent that don't know it, so.
Exactly. The learners, the ones that are new to the language, they'll take to the writing very quickly. As Aandeg says, the orthography or spelling is very straightforward. We have 7 vowels, and then we have voiced and unvoiced. And as long as you can hear the sounds, and you can write any word at all perfectly. It's the fluent speakers who come to class, they'll use phonetic, and they're the ones that find difficulty in learning to read and write, because they've had this their own way of writing for years and years, and find it hard to switch to a new system, even though the new system is much easier to use. That's been my experience.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes maybe as learners, we kind of overemphasize reading and writing too, so.
Yeah. For immersion, you don't want to read and write, you want spoken language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as adults, we want to like write everything down. Yeah, so good to just speak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gerald Hill writes, do advanced learners address serious topical issues, for instance, politics, pandemic, world events?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. Moving to the States, I'm in Minnesota for my master's, but it's interesting, just the terms we have for Canada and the States are really strange. Like in Canada, we don't have a word for Canada as Anishinaabe people, like.
No.
And then we call the States like Kichimokumanaking, so like the big knife people. But the Ojibwe in the States they wouldn't call themselves that at all. Like I said that one time and they got insulted by that, as I found out. So, and then in the States, the Ojibwe in the States, they call Canada English land, which also not English. Well, actually some of my relatives are, but anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I don't like being referred to as an English person either. Yeah, I'll answer that, Gerald. We are slowly developing new terminology to talk about politics, world events. We're working on a new dictionary for Manitoba, and so part of that is using the words that we developed at a terminology workshop. When was that, Aandeg? You were part of that project. That was in 2017, I think, 2017. I think that was the year that
It's
we,
like 3 years.
yeah. So we had people from different regions, multi-dialect. We tackled the modern terminology, everything to do with household items, to driving, to parts of a car, anything, countries, animals, exotic animals. And so what we would do is we'd have different dialects discuss how to say electric outlet. And then we would have all our different ways of saying it. And then we would choose one that was understandable to everyone. And if that didn't happen, well, we would just list all of them, you know. So we're developing our terminology for our language to modernize it. So then the future advanced learners will be able to use those words when they're talking about politics and pandemic, etc.
Yeah, I definitely know with people during the pandemic, there's been different people in Treaty 3, they came out with videos talking about the pandemic all in Ojibwe, and then in Manitoulin Island also people had signs and things talking about like social distancing and all these different terms all in Ojibwe. So, and just with people I know here online talking with, you know, been talking about getting vaccinated and different things. We know these different terms for that as well. Ojibwe, so that's been good.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're doing, Gerald. Now we have a question from Quella Musgrave. What is your experience with pronouns and tenses with different groups? Aandeg? It's a question about grammar.
Pronouns and tenses. I guess with different drills, I suppose. Getting used to, like when we start learning about at the start of class in the first semester or so of intro class, where okay, we're asking questions of like, what's your name? What are your all names? And then what's his name? What's his or her name? Which is the same in Ojibwe. There's just one word for that. And then what are their names? So kind of learn those. We kind of learn to ask those questions to each other. And we kind of want to start out with those kind of like face-to-face kind of questions you would ask and then have them answer it. And then that's where they kind of start out learning. You know, okay, these are the pronouns. I generally don't use those terms like, I try not to use those terms as much. And then with the tenses as well, dude, it's kind of hard to talk about other than past tense or future tense, but try and give an English example or something. So
those pronouns and tenses are things that we handle fairly easy, fairly early in our lessons. Pronouns we do the first lesson, you know, me, you, him, her. We have only one pronoun for him and her. We don't have gender. For past tense, it's pretty easy. You know, we just add a syllable to the sentence to make it past tense. Future tense, we have another syllable prefix that we add in front of the verb. So it's pretty easy, very easy.
The main thing is just getting them used to how it's all, you know, when you create a sentence, it's all in one word. So it's kind of getting them used to that. Okay, it comes in this little order. That's the main thing I find people struggle with. Putting it all together in spoken language, or if they're writing, sometimes they mix them up. So.
Our native languages are polysynthetic, which means they're all syllables that you put together into one big long word. So one verb can be a sentence because it's one word, you know, and it's not like that in English. English, you have separate words. And that's the only difference we have. Maura Studi asks, you mentioned drills. What do the drills consist of? Vocabulary or phrase?
Both, yeah. With vocabulary, yeah, like the verbs, or sometimes nouns, but generally we focus more on verbs most of the time. It could be, yeah.
Replace one word, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you introduce a sentence and then you just replace one word with each time.
Mm-hmm. Or sometimes it can be a whole phrase too, like you're learning like the WH questions, like where, when, how, or something like, where are you going? Where is he going? And then what I'd do is I'd make a piece of paper and then write it on there. One side would be Ojibwe, one side would be English. And then put them all, make like 20, 30 of them, put them all on a table. And that's what we would, then they'd be, I'd say a phrase and then they'd have to try and grab the right one. And then, we'd go through all of them, and then some people had like big stacks. With Zoom, I did something similar where I had like Quizlet or something like that, and then divide them into two teams just on Zoom, and then they would just try and say what was on the other side of it first, whatever came up on screen. So that was what I was trying to convert that onto Zoom. Yeah,
with drills, that's when you want the student to come up with the right term, to think of the right term. And with drills, I found that you do them with a group, they feel safer answering as a group. And then later on, then you could break it down to couples, 2 people in a group. And then eventually just single, as they get more and more knowledgeable, more able to do so. I hope that answers your question, Maura. But drills are certainly good for immersion teaching, for practicing speaking. Question from Nikki Shide. I'm mispronouncing the word, I think. How do you identify when an individual advances to the next level? Beginner to intermediate to advanced. Do you have an assessment tool to help determine that?
I know there's different tools out there, but generally when we've been doing with university class, it's just a year by year thing. So you go in beginner, then intermediate, and from there. But then within each class, beginner level, there'll be people at different levels, or people are more confident to speak while other people are more shy. Same thing goes for the intermediate. But after a year or so of learning, you're kind of beyond just the basic, like how to pronounce things, how to make a sentence and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I kind of see as being the beginner. And then once you're at the intermediate, you can kind of at least put together sentences, kind of create some responses to questions, and you have some sort of basis to kind of keep going on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, university, we just have testing and to advance them to the next level. Miranda Ellis asks about how do you go about coining new terms? And I did discuss that a few minutes ago about the terminology development. Aandeg, would you like to add to what I said? You want?
Yeah, it's a lot like that. In immersion, as learners, sometimes we have to like create a term too. Like in that video, like we didn't know what to call Indian tacos, so we just made up a random term. We kind of made taco sound more Ojibwe sounding, but it was just, no one had ever said that before, probably. But
yeah, coining new words is it's wonderful to do so, because then you're modernizing your language. You're not having to use loan words, English words. Sometimes we have to rely on loan words when it's really hard to come up with a term. For instance, insurance. We didn't have insurance 100 years ago in our villages. So sometimes we have to describe a concept, and that's not good when you have to describe something, because then, you know, you're be talking all day. So sometimes we have to use loan words and say insurance. Unless we work some more on those difficult words. Privacy is another one. In a hospital, you have to use that term, privacy, because somebody, you know, you have the curtains so that the patient will have some privacy. But it's hard to translate that term, because when we've translated it, you have to say something that's done secretly. And then you think, why secretly?
And there's just kind of the abstract privacy too, and that doesn't, how do you translate that?
But that's a very good question, because all our native languages in Canada and the US, they will have to modernize their languages in order to keep them alive. So having groups of different dialects within that language group is one way to do it. To make a template of words that you want to have translated or to work on, to modernize, make a template of different areas in geography, physics, whatever, and then have a representative of each dialect in that group, and then they can suggest their words, vote on the one that's most understandable to everybody. That's how we did that years ago, Aandeg, in Sault Ste. Marie. It was a very good exercise. It was, and of course, it's always lots of fun, because what something means in one area means something totally opposite in another area, and there's a lot of laughter. But it's something we all will have to do to modernize our languages. Somebody asks here, Nikki, can you tell a short story about the bird behind you, Aandeg?
Oh.
All in Ojibwe. In Ojibwe.
Wa'awe baneshi, yeah. Jajak is nekazo miwa do dem dete gewin do demi. No kumis oki masnipi an oe genin kiwichi agi masnipi yank. Daso bebun Japane, yeah. So me guys yank.
I'll translate. The bird behind him is drawing done by me and Aandeg of the crane, and that's Aandeg's clan and his father's clan too. Evelyn, she asks, for our Carith language, it is not written, so therefore we have to do all our lessons orally, which is kind of hard, but we keep going to get our young people to speak. Not really a question. Okay, she was offering some information there.
That's good.
But that's good that they're not having to write it, because then they can concentrate on speaking and understanding. Very good. Julia Jeffrey asks, what do you think about language apps? Some tribes are looking into this for younger people. However, it can be threatened by outside groups wanting to copyright the language.
Yeah, I feel like people, we want apps, but it's not really the answer to all our problems, but it's good that people have the resources to do that. But I'm kind of more focused on working with adults and trying to get them to learn more and speak more with each other. I think that's what I kind of focus more on, is building that group of adults out there who can talk to each other, and then they'll talk to their kids, and building that kind of community that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. Language apps may be a good tool for people to learn on their own, to answer to a little inanimate object. I would prefer to talk with people, to initiate conversations.
Yeah, if people have the skills out there who can do that, that's good. Yeah, but
yeah, I'm not against apps. If they work, good. Julia Jeffrey, again, she asks, with your advanced class, how are the students doing with speaking in the past tense?
oh yeah. Well, with that like immersion group that everyone's really just great about that. Always people makes mistakes, but yeah, they're doing really good.
Yeah, again, our language, Ojibwe, it's very easy to go from present tense to past tense because you just add a prefix. That's all. Once they do that, past tense is simple.
One thing is sometimes with some verbs, you don't have past tense. Like if you say, oh, like I found it, you don't have past tense. That kind of goes against what we know in English. So that's one thing to kind of talk to them about. But
because then you have to say it in the present tense. But in English, it comes out as past tense. And then you have the perfect tense, which when something happened way back then, or it was happening back then. So then there's a different tense that you use for that. But you teach that, you conjugate it. Conjugation. Okay, Miranda Ellis asks, do you have immersion classrooms for preschool K-12 grades, elementary grades?
It's not really I don't have all the info on that, but there's at least 4 immersion schools in Canada and the United States for Ojibwe. I think there's one out on Manitoulin Island, which I'm not really sure. That's again more of the lower grades, I think, but I'm not. And again, same thing with Kenora in Ontario. They also have. It's more for younger kids, but I don't know anyone connected with that, so I don't really know what's going on with that. And then there's also schools down here in the States. There's Nigane, and then there's Wadukudading. And Wadukudading, I think, has been going the longest, and they have the most grades out of any school. I can't tell you how far it goes, at least 6, I want to say. And there might be some more schools around too, in the States and in Canada. Some do part bilingual, so.
Yeah, Aandeg and I teach at the university level, so we don't teach children. Eva King has one more question. Will this information meeting recording be available at a later date? I think so.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's going on YouTube. Yeah.
I'll answer these other questions on the chat very quickly because I think we're going to be winding down very shortly. How long has your language been written? Well, the missionaries, when they came here in the early 1800s, they began writing it. They weren't linguists, but they started recording it written, and that's the earliest that we have. But 1996, we had a conference of Ojibways to find a common writing system, and we concluded that the system that we use now at universities is the most widely used one, so that's what we use. Another question might be, I think that's it for questions. The others are comments. Creating new words, it's becoming a living language again. Do you think it's beneficial to have English intertwined a little bit so there's understanding while teaching? That's a question for us. For me, sometimes you have to maybe throw in an English word if everybody's just totally bamboozled. You know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
sometimes.
yeah. And Gloria says, I acknowledge and applaud you for teaching your native language. Keep up the work you're doing. Our Head Start program is full language immersion. All is taught orally. Still in the process of creating Taiwa words for some English words. Another person said, you mentioned Quizlet. Can you share any other websites that you use to teach besides Quizlet?
Yeah. That one's a good one. There's another one now that I'm blanking on. I'm blanking on what it's even called. It's kind of like different party game sites. You can create your own. They have templates where you can do your own, put in your own questions, and then you can just write them in. And then it's like a choice of 4 things, and then you can work with that with students, like which one's the right one, have them in teams, or there's websites out there for create your own Jeopardy, which is kind of fun too. You can have that for more beginner stuff, or you could even make it like advanced and have it just basically like Jeopardy, even like Kahoot. Yeah, sorry, that's in the chat there. Yeah, Kahoot. That's where it's like you have different options. Yeah. It's kind of like a party game, but you can make your own, use your own language.
So I think this is concluding our session here. Thank you for all your questions and comments. I've been very fortunate to have Aandeg learning the language and teaching it. I feel very thankful, very, very thankful to Manito, our creator, to having a person like him in my life who will pass on my work when I leave. He'll be continuing my work. And I'm so, so very grateful for that. And I wish that that this not be something rare that happens. I hope that all people my age pass on the language to their grandchildren. Do it in your home, do it, take them to classes. When you're riding around, ask questions like, what do you see? Teach them, I see trees, I see whatever. Just use the language. The other thing for those who are still fluent but live in the city, practice self-immersion. Talk to yourself in your language, because if you don't, it's going to be eroded. English is so strong. It's so strong. So, miigwech, gibisandamek, miigwech Aandeg, gichinandam, yagi kagi gituinoma.
Miigwech random gainin. Yeah, miigwech.
Help me. Thank you. Bye.